Hey, everyone, you feeling dead inside? That means you've tuned in to an hour of Friends with Death Benefits. We have a special guest today in the studio. He's in the business of death. Pretty exciting stuff. So we're tapping into what it's like to be a funeral director. What really goes on in that place? What goes on inside your head? Anyways, buckle up. It's going to be a bumpy one.
Thanks for joining us, guys. How's it going, everybody? Thanks for hanging out with us. It's another episode of Friends with Death Benefits. I'm Justin Paulson. With me, as always, is my co-host, Tiff Mussman.
Hey.
How are you?
Are you talking to them or me?
You.
Ooh.
They can answer,
so
Tiff.
Intense.
This is radio.
They can answer. I hope they did. If you're listening to this, I hope you answered.
Out loud.
Yeah, I'm
we
good.
Didn't hear it.
I'm doing all right. I'm
Yeah?
doing all right. Yeah. I'm working a lot.
Painting a lot.
Painting a lot.
You're good, kid.
Well, thanks.
I'm impressed.
Appreciate it. Yeah.
Seems like a lot of people are. That's got to feel good.
It does feel
Like,
good.
I know it's therapeutic.
It feels good
for
just
you.
to do it.
Right.
Because
That's what I was going to say. I know
yeah.
it feels good just to do it, but to get a little,
Yeah. I mean, I don't care about the notoriety part, but
we all care a little.
Honestly, it
good
makes
to
me
do.
kind of feel weird. I don't know how to take compliments. That's something I'm trying to work on. But if people enjoy it, like Katie Burgo I made a specific piece for her house that she's building, and she sent a picture of her like holding it up against the wall that she's gonna hang on. And that's kind of cool. It's like, wow, somebody's like got my stuff in their house. It's pretty cool.
I'm a pretty big supporter of people creating art and like being,
Are you trying to ask me if I'll paint you naked?
You ain't ready. You ain't ready.
You are not ready.
You ain't ready. Paint me like one of your French girls too. Oh my God. Blue diamond I can put on.
Your little tendril of hair over your glistening giant forehead.
I don't think it'll work. I'm afraid of boats.
All right. And rightfully so.
Yeah, I don't know.
You know what we're referencing. So how's your work week been? You've been busting out some.
It's been good. It's been a really good couple of months. Like we went from, crazy not doing anything to the things we have been doing have been very successful. We hosted, after months of work and planning, the second annual North Iowa Comedy Festival last weekend. It
was amazing.
Sold out crowd.
Great.
Had to turn people away, which I hate to do, but if you're going to have a problem, it's a good problem to have. Yeah. Tiff introduced me.
Yeah.
She plugged the show in front of all those people.
Can I just say all those people? It was like a petri dish. COVID petri dish in there. There were so many times I looked around. I was like, "Oh shit, I'm getting it. I'm getting it tonight. I've been too lucky, man. I'm going down tonight."
Because now that there's no for sure mask mandate, you can't really force people at this point. And we're packed in there. And Tiff said to me, "I'll just be honest. There's we'll say over 100 people."
Yeah,
in
there was
room.
over 100.
And Tiff said to me before the show, she said, "I just feel like this is an opportunity for us to get new listeners." Because there's going to be some sad people after tonight because someone is for sure dying from COVID after this is over.
For sure.
But aside from that,
people died with laughter.
It was a very successful
It
evening.
was amazing. It was a great show.
We're booking comedy clubs. Good thing. Every day seems like something new, awesome's happening. And I feel like we're getting very close to me being able to say comedy's my job again. I'm not going to quit the Hallmark.
Dude, you got just
job.
for the
I'm gonna keep
comic relief. Of that
and it keeps me filling out a W-2. I don't like Big Brother getting in my business too much. You know what I mean?
Fair play.
So
Yeah.
and I can tell my wife, like, I got 2 jobs. What have you done lately with your college degree and your career, your 9 to 5? But so it's kind of weird to have that be a job. But speaking of having weird jobs, we've got another really fun guest with us tonight.
Fun. It's so weird to say that because his job is so not fun.
Right, but we realized we pretty much know all the same people, did all the same stuff, just didn't really run into each other somehow. But
he's in a completely opposite industry of you. So in the studio tonight we have Mike Ewing. So what's your title, Mike?
There's a lot of different terms that get thrown around.
Sure.
Technically, I'm a licensed funeral director.
Okay.
You hear the term mortician or undertaker. I don't really know the differences or if there is such a thing anymore. Okay. I answered all of them.
Okay. Yeah.
Call me whatever you want. Just don't
Okay.
call me late for dinner, right? So
Classic.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm ready to call you Undertaker because I mean, how many WrestleManias have you been to?
I haven't been to any yet,
See,
man.
that's just-
I've watched a bunch of them though.
Yeah,
man.
sure. Well, you know.
I'm down, man.
Yeah, cool.
Actually, my
Let's talk
instructor,
after this.
one of my instructors in mortuary school, I mean, is like a dead ringer, no pun intended, for Paul Bearer. I'm not
No
kidding.
kidding.
Yeah, I got to show a picture later.
Did you know
man.
Paul Bearer was an actual mortician?
I did not know
Before he was, before he
No shit.
Yeah,
I
that's
did
how the
not know
gimmick
that.
started. They were looking for someone to. They had this character idea for the guy that played the Undertaker, and they wanted him to have a manager because they didn't want him to talk much. And they're like, it's going to be like a mortician thing, and he's like, I am a mortician, and they're like, whoa, so
That's
yeah.
amazing. The Undertaker, hands down, was my favorite.
Cool stuff.
Yeah,
He
so
just
cool.
retired this last year.
Really?
Like 30
Was
years
it the
of doing
same
that
guy?
character. Yep, always.
It was always the same
Yep.
guy.
And it's weird
Wow.
too because he was one of the guys that never broke character because he
Yeah.
wanted to be like keep the mystique of that character.
Yeah.
And now he's doing all these interviews like out of character now that he's retired, and it's kind of cool to see him like, well,
Is he
there's
a
like a
total
normal
dork?
guy there, and like,
Yeah,
it's
wow.
interesting. That's a weird job.
That
Pro
is
wrestling. That's a weird job for sure, but
I'd say right behind that is
yeah,
funeral
it's
director.
not far off.
Yeah. How long you been in the business?
Well, I grew up around funeral service. My dad is a funeral director, 50 years this year.
Okay.
And
Okay.
so I literally grew up in the funeral home.
Okay.
And then I
You're
was
Veda Sultanfuss from My Girl.
Oh, yeah.
Veda.
I
You
love
know
that you
Veda.
remember her name. That's
Yeah,
like, I didn't
how
know
you forget
last-
Veda Sultanfuss.
I got my glasses, man. I'm good to go,
That's
right?
right.
Yeah. No bees, allergies in my family
He's
that I'm
good to
aware
go,
of.
yeah.
So, yeah, I grew up in the funeral home, and we kind of did things differently in that we moved the funeral home out of our house. Instead of, in the 70s and 80s and even before that, there was a lot of funeral directors that lived in the funeral home, like or an apartment above the funeral home. I'm sure there's still some that do that. There's not a lot of that. But we stayed in the house and we moved the funeral home out into an old church, basically. And so it was very normal upbringing. In hindsight, it's kind of strange if you think about it.
How
but-
long did you live in the environment where
I suppose I was 5, maybe.
Okay.
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Do you have memories of that?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I remember being in an apartment upstairs and we had to be quiet.
Yeah.
If there was like a funeral or a visitation or something going on. And
Mm-hmm.
I have one strange recollection of when I was little, we came home from somewhere and like I ran in and hugged my dad or something and there was like a funeral going on or something.
Oh, man.
But, I don't know why I don't know why we can remember certain things and not
Yeah.
others. But
Yeah.
so it was, I think generally speaking, it was a pretty normal upbringing considering.
Yeah.
Maybe an unlikely,
Yeah.
I feel like we all have stuff like that where like we've been around certain things our whole life that maybe other people haven't,
Right.
no matter what those are, where you're like, well, that's normal to me.
Yeah,
And then other people are like, nah.
But at
it's not
some
as
point,
much.
like right pre-adolescence, you're kind of like, this is a little different.
This
This is weird.
seems a
Why is
little
everybody
weird.
treating me differently? Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Were you
so-
treated differently as a kid?
I don't know. I not necessarily. I don't think it was so much like, kids couldn't come over to play in our house or anything
Yeah.
like that. I don't think there was anything like that. I think had I been there longer or had the funeral home been in our home longer, maybe.
Yeah.
But no, I don't.
Do you find that the like generational, like you taking, your dad was a funeral director, now you are, do you see in the business, is that something that happens a lot? Because I actually have another friend who's a funeral director, and it's because she grew up in it too.
Sure.
And then just kind of like taking over the family business sort of. And because a question me and Tiff had talked about going into this interview was, like what makes a person decide to go into that? And I suppose if it's something you've been around, it's an easy transition. So.
Yeah, I was kind of a late bloomer to it. I, early on, I think I was probably 6th or 7th grade, and I have a brother who's about 8 years older than I am. And, Dad was kind of a one-man show, and he had 2 funeral homes and had an opportunity to buy another business from a guy who was retiring. They worked back and forth. And he sat us down at that point, I think, like I said, 6th or 7th grade probably, and said, do either of you want to do this? And neither one of us did at that point. I wanted to work Tuesday through Thursday from 10 to 2 and, be a rock star or whatever, I didn't want to work nights or weekends. And so I had no interest at that point. And my older brother went on to be a doctor, and he's had no interest. He's way more educated and more intelligent than I am. So he recognized early on that wasn't for him either. So, I really didn't have a place, kind of like a farmer whose dad rented the land out to somebody else in a lot of ways.
Oh,
he had to
wow.
bring a partner in kind of when he did this expansion, and I was out, so to speak, and I didn't really have any interest at all until years later. But years ago, it was very common that it was a generational thing, to go back to your question. Nowadays, you don't see that so much. I know when my dad said that he went to mortuary school, I think there was maybe 3 or 4 people in his class that weren't the next generation of their families. So that was pretty unusual. And things have just changed a lot, like a lot of industries, over 50% female now, I think, which, 50 years ago was unheard of.
Yeah.
Females in ownership, in every level. So it's good. I chose it in my late 20s. I had an opportunity to come back, and was kind of drifting a little bit, and was always in the back of my mind that maybe I missed my opportunity. And so it came back full circle for me. And 2008, I was working at Kraft Foods here in Mason City at that time, and my wife had a pretty good gig here in town, and so we talked about it and decided to go back to school. And then the day I passed my national board exam to get licensed, the very next day they announced that they were closing her store. She was the B. Dalton bookstore manager at the time.
Wow.
And it was just like this, okay,
Yeah.
I'm going to take it as a sign. I don't know if it is or not, but I'm going to take it as that.
Yeah.
And so, it was good. No looking back. It's been good. So, full time, 12-ish, 13 years, something like that. Licensed for probably 10 or 11 now. I kind of lose track of dates and times sometimes.
Sure. So I think like one of the biggest questions that people would ask, and I mean, and you explained in your experience why you went into the field, but like, why do people go into the field of death, do you think? Like, what's by and large, in your opinion?
That's a great question. And they always say if you answer that with, that's a good question, that's like you're buying time.
Yeah,
Trying to think of the right answer.
Yeah.
Man, I don't know. I think that it's a service industry, really.
Yeah.
It's got a lot more to do with the living than it does with the dead.
Absolutely.
Maybe you've experienced that with your individual losses. You and I have talked about yours a little bit, but we haven't really talked much about yours. And I'm not trying to flip the tables
that's
on
what we're
you.
here for, man.
But I think most people that I know who last in funeral service, it's more than just a curiosity or a morbid interest. It's about
Serving.
caring for people.
Yeah.
And, I think a lot of people who, if they weren't funeral directors, maybe they'd be nurses, maybe they'd be nurses' aides, maybe they'd be doctors.
That was kind of my follow-up question was, do you find a similarity in personality with, or like character stuff?
Boy, I don't know. It's so varied.
Really?
Yeah, it's so varied. I think that a lot of people, ministry maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe in the nursing realm.
Right around in there.
I don't know. Yeah. It's a unique animal.
When you're dealing with like colleagues in the industry, do you notice like personality similarities? Like it has to take a specific type of brain to do that sort of job.
Help me find out what's wrong with my brain.
Okay, got it.
Come on, let's dig into this thing.
Yeah, okay.
I don't know. I think that you have to, you probably have to have some coping skills of some sort, or ability to maybe compartmentalize a little bit. I don't know.
Yeah.
Not that it's a conscious effort necessarily, but there's that. I think empathy. I think that desire to help people.
Yeah.
To put others ahead of you. In rural Iowa, especially, we're kind of jacks of all trades. We're all working 24/7. It's not just 9 to 5 thing. Whereas maybe in a metro area, maybe there's a little more specialization of labor, that people are working more shift type work like they maybe would in another industry, like in the hospital, like we talked about earlier. I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's like a defining characteristic other than wanting to help people.
Yeah.
And maybe this is just a way to do that.
Yeah, for sure.
I feel like for me, like, so as a young, my early experiences with funerals, obviously it's customary for a funeral director to carry themselves a certain way when dealing with customers. Like you said, empathy,
Sure.
soft voice, understanding, you know what I mean?
I don't have a soft voice, man.
Well, you know what I mean? Kind of like a tender, like a sympathetic take on it.
Yes.
I'm just a tender teddy bear. Yeah.
That's right.
Right. And I'm sure, I bet you have it. You probably don't notice you have it, but you probably do. I've noticed that, like, I just assumed that, like, that's how people that do that job were, like, and obviously in the short conversation we've had, and I have a friend, she dated a friend of mine. That's how we became friends. And one other guy that I've met. And you guys are all very laid in your, when you shut it off, very normal, laid back people. You know what I mean? But she's like a certain personality type. I'm sure there are parts, but it's interesting how it almost sounds insulting to say, like, it's surprising to me that you're normal. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
but, like,
right.
Well, thank you.
But
I
it's
think,
such a crazy job that
It is.
It can,
but
be.
I imagine you have to be able
can
to
be.
shut it off.
Well, I kind of take exception with part of that in that, I've been around funeral directors, and just like any career, that they carry themselves, and this is how we speak, and this is how we stand, and this, and that's not really who I am. I'm kind of warts and all. This is who I am. I'm never gonna make it with this pretty face and life. Thank God this is not a video thing, right? But like, I just feel like you just gotta be yourself a little bit.
Sure.
When I was gonna go back into doing this, I worked with a guy in my previous career who he'd known my father and been around him and had worked with my dad, and he said, why don't you do this? Why don't you do this? I kind of I missed my chance, that kind of thing. And then when I decided to make this change, he was the first person I went to, and he said, whatever you do, be yourself. Don't act like this is how I am.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place for that. Don't get me wrong. But I just try to be, aw shucks, Mike.
Yeah.
That's kind of who I am.
Yeah, right.
The guy that trips over the microphone cord when he comes in the room and that
Do you
kind of
think
thing.
it's evolved in that way?
I don't know.
Like
I think
that almost it was expected before.
Yeah,
and
I
now
think
that,
maybe it has.
Yeah.
I think people's expectations maybe have changed a little bit. I think people see through fake
Sure.
in everything we do.
Yeah.
Most
Oh,
people
yes.
do.
Oh, yes.
Things have definitely changed in that we're more accepting,
Yes.
and I think that we as funeral directors have been maybe that way. We try to be non-judgmental. If you're asking about a characteristic, maybe non-judgmental, meet you where you are,
Yeah. Oh, yeah,
walk
that's
this
good.
journey with you where you are, not try to tell you how you should act or feel or whatever.
Right.
And I guess I try to be that as well.
Yeah.
We had a lady that has worked for us. She does hair, and when her mother was dying, she was from another community out of our area. She said, I want you to do the funeral. And I said, okay,
Yeah.
why? And she said, because you're the same person behind closed doors as you are out front. And I thought, that's the best compliment anybody's ever given me.
Yes. Yes.
That's
She knows
so
what she's
good.
getting.
Yeah.
Yes.
But warts and all, she accepted
Yeah.
me for who I was, and we'd spent some, time together and through some stuff. And I thought, God, what a great compliment. And then, so that to me was kind of like, a moment where, all right, I can be this normal person.
Yeah.
There's a time and a place. You don't want to be cracking jokes and,
for sure.
in some of these tough scenarios and things. But I think just trying to be myself, trying to meet people where they are. In your line of work, Tiff, in the sales world of home improvement stuff, you're working with people of all,
all demographics, all tax brackets. So
Absolutely.
it is about everything that you're saying is totally relatable, and that's like what you were saying. You're essentially selling yourself, right? I mean, kind of, right?
I guess so, yeah.
I mean, so because you're in the service industry, like you kind of are selling who you are and what your brand is and that sort of thing. And I feel that way when I go into, on a sales call, is because I want to be my authentic self, because what if they were to see me outside of that environment? I'm not the same. And I'm trying to change the standard of what like construction and home remodeling and all that looks like, and salespeople as a whole. And so too with like your position is like you're setting a different bar, because maybe you're just being yourself, and you're not so put on and so stiff and so sterile. You know what I mean?
I'm definitely not of those
No,
things.
you're none of
I've
those
never been
things.
accused of being too sterile. So,
for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's awesome.
That so that story you just told about, that lady that wanted you to work on their loved one, that kind of made me think of another question that I kind of wanted to ask you. Was obviously being in a smaller community where, I mean, we walked in tonight and realized we know a lot of the same people. Right. I assume you come across a lot of situations where you're asked to do the services for people maybe you've known, or, and I guess my question about that is that difficult for you to do, or do you see it more as an honor that they would want you to do it, or?
The answer is
kind of
yes.
be a conflicting thing, maybe. I mean,
The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Next question. No, I'm
Sure.
kidding. No, truly, that was something that I had to confront when I was going to come back into my home community or home communities. Was that okay? I'm going to be potentially taking care of a lot of people that I know in small town, north central Iowa, small communities. The 5 communities that we're in don't probably total 10,000 people.
Sure, yeah.
Maybe if you count the rural outlier communities, maybe a little bit more than that. But it can be challenging. I've cared for parents and grandparents of classmates.
Sure.
I've cared for children of classmates. I've cared for people that I had as school teachers and coaches and administration. People who impacted my life growing up. People that I went to church with, people that whatever the case might be, and that was kind of something I was like, oh man, can I handle this?
Yeah.
Emotionally as well as I was never a bad kid, but I wasn't like Mr. Perfect either.
Right.
So
yeah.
there's another wrestling reference for you.
Absolutely.
But I just. We all have a little bit of baggage we carry around.
Yeah.
And especially, as the kid that was in the bands, and had long hair at one time, believe it or not, I actually had long hair. Yeah.
Me too.
But, so I had to overcome a little bit of that, but it's good. They see me that I am who I am. I don't hide from those things.
Yeah.
I didn't rob any banks or anything like that, but I just,
You had your stuff.
Yeah, we all do.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
So, but at the same time, when somebody calls me, is what they're truly doing when they call us, it starts with a phone call usually. They're inviting me to come into their lives for a couple of days, a week, a month, whatever it might be, a year, and help them. Will you please come help me? Is what they're really asking. And it's like, oh my God, what greater honor is that?
And not only that, but when they're like, essentially they're most vulnerable that they're going to be. And that kind of made me think of my biggest question that I had for you. And it has, I imagine, several sub questions that we'll get into, but what is it? And this is a blanket statement. We'll see where it takes us, but what is it like waking up every day and knowing that you're going to work to help people that are at their, a lot of times just lowest that they're going to be. And then they're just not their shining moment, just sad. And a lot of people are just devastated and
confused.
Scared. That's like going to be an everyday thing. And like, you get up, you brush your teeth, you get dressed, and now I have to go try to be a pillar for someone that's just falling apart. Like what is that like?
Yeah.
It goes back again to it's kind of a privilege and an honor to be asked. And it's a kind of a responsibility that I carry too, that they ask me that I want to step up for them and help them. Are you asking is it like depressing or?
I mean, I think maybe, obviously you've been doing it a long time. It's something you've gotten used to, but is it hard to leave it at work?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it is. Whatever I do, whatever I've done, good, bad, otherwise, whether it's music or a Bears fan, I'm sorry about, I dig in, I dive in with both feet,
Sure.
and in this career, it is truly more than, it's not a job, I feel like it's my calling, not to get all holy on you or whatever, but I do believe it's kind of what I'm meant to do. I don't know if I'm a big destiny guy, but this is what I'm supposed to be doing. And so I don't mind working 20 hours a day or 24 hours a day some days, or, and walking with somebody. Their day is so much worse than mine is. It kind of goes back to what we were talking about earlier about I don't have the right to complain because these people are depending on me to help them. And again, what I feel more than anything is what a privilege it is to be asked.
Yeah.
It's, I love what I do, and that sounds maybe strange.
No,
but I
because
love
it's
it
for the living.
It really is. It really is.
I get that.
You're so gung ho about this because you have a servant's heart, and this is how you serve. Right. This is That's how I feel. Even everything you're saying, I feel about my job. I'm a window salesperson, but it's like, I believe that my works are sewing into people, and whether that's people in
No
their,
question.
me helping people improve their house, or you helping them through a dark and
Yep.
stormy day,
Yep.
And so I think we can go out comedy,
I
that's
was
my
going to
God.
say,
Yeah.
even for you saying like, it seems silly for you to say as a salesperson. For me to be like, I tell dirty jokes on stage, but
yeah,
sometimes laughter is.
But
you
your
know,
dirty jokes, it's a big continuum.
it is. Yeah.
I need windows,
Yeah.
and I need to laugh.
And
Yep.
if someone,
Yeah.
can, if I
And
can,
I
for
need you
30
to bury
minutes,
my whatever.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
I think we all, three of us, are the type of people that when we're able to make someone's life a little better in whatever aspect it is, I think I can speak for all three of us that it fills our buckets.
Yeah, for sure.
I know you well enough to know that for sure. And just
Yeah.
talking to you, I feel like you're the same type of person. And that comes in so many different forms. You got to
Yeah.
find your strengths to do that for people like us. But like, it's a good comparison where like, it's the people that do stuff that make people's lives better usually get something out of it too.
certainly, I don't think there's, obviously I have to make a living, I got to pay bills, I got to put food on the table, and we have employees that rely on that as well. And, that's a very important part of what we do. But, it's not about that for me. It really isn't.
Yeah.
It's a satisfaction of trying to do a good job. If I stand before my maker someday, that I can say,
yeah.
I tried my best, man.
Left the world a little better than
Try
when you got
to,
there.
yeah.
Well, and I think any job that you do that you love and you're passionate about and you do well, the money thing will come.
Absolutely. I agree with
like
that.
it really will. It'll happen. So, I mean, I think it's just as long as you're going out there and doing your best.
Well, I'm fortunate enough, and it sounds like both of you are in the same boat, kind of to piggyback on you here, is that we get to make a living doing these things.
What you love, yeah.
Whereas, some people maybe they build hammers all day and they got to go home and they got to help people at their church or with their kids playing soccer or
Yeah.
tumbling or
Yeah.
or whatever it may be. We get to do it, or at least I feel like I get to do it. I get to pour all of myself into it.
Yeah.
And every ounce of energy. And there are some days where it's like the head hits the pillow and the alarm clock goes off, but I feel so blessed to be able to do that.
Yeah.
And to not have to fulfill that need of helping other people another way,
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
It's an interesting feeling to enjoy what you do. To go back to Saturday night, that show we did that was so successful. It took so much planning. And, when we go out on the road, it's a lot of just, we talk a bar into letting us do a show. We go do the show and we go home. There's not a lot of extra stuff. But when we're doing it ourselves, there's the selling tickets,
Oh my
booking the
gosh.
comics, making sure everything's, finding out you don't have the chairs and calling Tiff and getting her to bring you a bunch of chairs so that you can make it happen.
if you know somebody who has a
And,
funeral home, they got lots
Yeah,
of folding
right.
chairs.
Good to
man.
know. Good to know for future reference. But you go. I went through this whole night. I get to perform, which is fun, and I go through the whole thing, and it's this great experience. It really fills my cup where I get to perform, and I get to help all these other people perform, and I get to entertain people and send them home happy. And I get home, and then my wife's like, "Well, should we count the money?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, there's money too. Like no way. Like I'm getting paid to do this. This is crazy." And it just like you said, it's just when you can love your job. It's such a corny, played out saying, but if you love your job, you never work a day in your life.
For real.
Absolutely.
It really is.
That's what it feels
There's
like.
something true to sayings that stick around for a long time.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah, those cliches, there's a lot of truth in those
Yeah,
things.
they
There
stick
is.
around for a reason.
Yeah.
So before you got here, Justin, Mike and I were talking down in my car, and so you had said earlier about how you feel really bad about like having a bad day because your days in your industry are spent with people in their worst day of their life.
Yep.
And so when you've done funerals for your people do you feel guilty about feeling sad alongside of being like the head dude?
Yeah, sometimes, I feel like if I'm crying or if I'm feeling bad about things or if I'm mourning or grieving,
Yeah.
which how deep you want to go on grief, we can
Oh
go
yeah.
as deep as you want to
Let's
go.
go.
But, there's sometimes there's this, what is he? He's just a friend or,
Yeah.
I think what it is just this, in our society, it's this perception that, oh, we're not supposed to do these things, or, what are you crying for? You didn't know this person or whatever. And I probably get touched, in my heart every single day, one way or another. Yeah. And you sit there and go, oh, man, this person, I get to see like the Cliff's Notes version of someone's life, over the course of a couple of days. And I get to hear all these cool experiences about the guy who, I don't want to be too specific, told the World War II general who's famous to go take a hike, I get to hear some of these stories, or these experiences that I kind of get to live vicariously through other people a little bit. It's kind of strangely voyeuristic sometimes in a way.
Yeah.
But then there's people that I do know and they're not exaggerating their stories or, friends of ours, we've got mutual friends or family members of mine. And it's such a blessing to be a part of that.
Yeah.
And I do feel guilty sometimes if, someone lost their husband and we were buddies growing up and, I feel bad about it. And I think, that's nothing compared to what they must be feeling, buck up, dude.
So what we were talking about in the car, though, is how we as like society make it somehow like it's not okay for us to grieve, even if it was just an acquaintance. I mean, there has to have been times where you have been spending time with a family for a week.
Yep.
You get to know them. You get to know this person who you've never met alive, but like, all about them. Like you said, you get the Cliff's Notes of this person's life, whether it be 10 years of life or, 90. There has to be moments where you feel so overcome with emotion and that we somehow convince ourselves that we're not allowed to have that, that we're not allowed. And talk about the complexities of grief, right? Is that it comes in many, many, many different forms. And we have to, I think it's important for us to really drop the veil on the fact that it's okay if you only had one interaction with this person and in it, but he or she moved you in some way, that you can shed some tears over it. Or, I mean, I don't care though. And I'll always say like, it doesn't matter if it's your child or if it's somebody that you met for one day. The important thing is just not to stay there in that bad, yucky spot. Right.
That's kind of what made me, it's funny how everything's flowing so nicely. Aren't we great at this?
I'll take credit for all of it. I'm funeral directing. You don't even realize.
It's all happening.
Better check my pulse.
Well, see, now where was I even going with that? I don't know. So easily I'm
he was just so excited.
Track.
No, that's okay.
Do you have something I'll think back on?
No, that's fine. So,
Can I touch on something too?
Yeah.
Why you mentioned there, grief is the experience of loss. This is my book.
Okay, I'm excited.
No. I'm not a sociologist.
Right. Yeah.
You've read all these theories, whether it's Kubler-Ross or whoever.
Yeah.
It's not that simple.
Right.
In my opinion, what I've seen in my years of doing this,
okay,
or in my years of life, 41 years,
Yeah.
But anytime I would define grief as the experience of loss. And you cannot have love without loss.
Yes.
I don't care if it's love for your job, love for your crappy football team who I hate, who will never win a Super Bowl, or if it's sorry, brother, I had to go there. Or if it's your job that you lost, or your friendship, or a divorce, or something has changed, or death, which is the ultimate loss.
Right.
Grief is dealing with that.
Yeah.
In grief, when there's a loss, let's talk about death specifically, because that's what we're here to talk about. This is friends with death benefits, not friends with having lost their job benefits or whatever. That's a different podcast for somebody else, right? So there's a schism in time with a moment of loss, and your world becomes BC and AD, for lack of a better term. What life was before you had this loss, before you lost your son or your sister or your mother or my grandma, whoever it might be.
Yeah, right.
And then there's the future of what it's like without that. And this schism is ever present forever. It's always present. And it's this realization that, my God, I'll never be the same.
Wow. Yes.
I have it a lot.
You know,
over and
it'll
over
never be
again.
the same, right? Do you feel that way?
Absolutely. I had a moment like that just today. You know,
And so I think that we need to recognize this. And I think if I can climb the soapbox for just a
Yes,
second,
please.
is Western society, 21st century, white male America, whatever it is, I'm being very broad here. We have been taught, or we are led to believe for whatever reason, that I think we've focused so much on comfort and entertainment and filling our bellies and being in an air conditioned home in the summer and a heated home in the wintertime. And, you know, we are so focused on that we are so averse to bad stuff, bad feelings,
Yeah.
grief being one of them. I read a book years and years and years ago, and I don't even want to dignify the title, but there's a lot of garbage in it. But one of the things that stuck with me is that if you took, and I'm going to paraphrase, every human emotion, every possible human emotion, and we threw it in a big old pot and we started cooking it and boiling out the crud and tried to get down to the base elements of emotion, there are two: love and,
Sadness, grief,
nope,
fear.
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 Love and
That's how I've
fear.
always said it was fear. I wasn't sure, but
Love
yeah.
and fear. So let's talk about a love of a spouse, for example.
Yeah.
You know, you probably are experiencing love and fear. You love them so much, you're afraid something bad is going to happen.
Yes.
You're afraid what your life is going to be without this person, or if something terrible were to happen. So everything is love and fear.
Yes.
Everything is love and fear. If this theory is true, which I've kind of come to believe that it is, then we sit there and say, okay, we want to experience love all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We are afraid of things that are uncomfortable,
Right.
that make us feel bad.
Mm-hmm.
We're so focused on feeling good and, you know, entertaining ourselves and these different things I talked about a moment ago, that we like try to go around grief.
Yes.
And you
This is what
can't.
I've been saying. I know I've said it a million times to Justin on the only way is through. That's it. And you can't have love without loss.
Absolutely.
There's, you know, behind anger is always fear.
Mm-hmm.
You know, behind sadness is always fear. And, you know, from the moment you get married,
Yep.
you're worried about losing that person. The moment you get pregnant, you're worried about your child dying.
Sure.
You know, the moment you become of age and realize that your parents aren't going to live forever, you start worrying about losing your parents. Like the fear that surrounds us just as a human beings is much, but that surrounds death and grief and loss it's
Fear.
just it's yeah.
It's fear. And
Yeah.
and then you wrap into the whole, like, what are people going to think of me? I'm a grown man. I'm crying at my mom's funeral.
Yes.
You know, the fear of all that. You know, it's kind of like, this is not a problem for you, obviously, but like public speaking, isn't that supposed to be like the biggest fear of,
Yeah.
and it was for me when I was younger. I don't know what snapped, but
Yeah.
well, I think you just like the attention, right?
Yeah, that's
Which is
probably
good.
it.
It's a good
That's it.
thing.
Yeah.
But, you know, what is more like public speaking than being in a room full of people, all with their eyes on you at that casket or at that urn
true.
or at that whatever? We try to avoid that, and we're not doing ourselves any favors. Imagine if there was a place in every community where you could come with a group of professionals and be in a non-judgmental place in any level of privacy or public you wanted at a set date and time to deal with this crap.
Yeah.
And so many of us, we try to avoid it.
Yeah.
And you're going to have that
That's why-
funeral, whether it's at
yes.
the grocery store or whether
Yes.
it's at, you know.
Yes.
it's
That's why
awful.
I always push, you know, doing the mental health stuff, therapy, whether it's, you know, I think you have to, I literally was just having this conversation yesterday with somebody about
I'm
how,
psychic, I do that.
yeah, right. A man of many hats, but that everything that we do that doesn't feel good as Americans or people is anytime we have a yucky feeling, we want to rush through it.
Yeah.
And like when you rush, you don't process, or you avoid, you don't process, and it just delays and delays. You have to deal with it as it comes right at you. I mean, and if you just, maybe you need a little mental staycation and you're not ready to deal with it, so you take a shower and have a beer, shower beer. It's not a big thing. Don't make a big deal about it. But, but eventually you gotta hit it, head on, because trying to take a detour, you're coming back around.
And it sucks. It really does. But like you're right. There's like, I just recently had one. It was my mom's first birthday, and it was just an awful day from morning to night. And it just,
don't you find those first Christmas, first birthday, those kind of landmarks on the calendar are like,
and they've all been, equally rough in their own way. The holidays are easier than I thought they were going to be, because I had a lot of friends like Tiff and my wife were, I was able to distract myself. And my wife told me she thinks maybe this one was so hard because the whole day was just completely focused on her. Instead of just the fact that we're doing these things that we used to do with her, like this was her day.
Right.
And it just was absolutely miserable from and I don't think I probably cried more that day than I have since, the early, the first few weeks. And it was devastating, but I woke up the next day and life goes on and you keep going. And
do you feel refreshed at all from that? Or, I mean, it's like there's an emotional exhaustion there,
maybe,
but do you feel like
maybe you don't notice it right away?
It's like a pressure valve that you've just let, or like a wound that you've seeped the pus out of until it gets
It just seems impossible in the moment, though.
It's
a
really graphic description.
Yeah. Hey, I'm gross.
But no, it's good. Yeah, well, whatever.
And we all have different things that, help with that. But like, so, we've established that all the different things we've talked about, which kind of leads me to this question, is having, said that you go home and think about this kind of stuff, or that, you find yourself, grieving over different things and different people that you've had around. After doing this job all day, sometimes 24 hours a day, what are some things for you personally that you do for yourself that help you decompress or get in a good headspace when you're having a hard time with some of the tricks of the trade, so to speak?
That's a good question. I used to play music. I'm retired now, so I don't have.
We never fully retired, right?
Okay, this sounds cool to say I'm retired. So
there's a guitar in a corner somewhere.
They're still sitting there. Yeah, they stare at me every time I walk by. They're like, remember me? I find that the stuff that requires the least amount of mental involvement helps the most. Like just watching TV or something.
Yeah, tuning out.
It's completely wasteful of time. I recognize. Yeah, I think I do. I recognize more than most about how valuable time is. But once in a while, it's just like I just got to shut it off.
I feel that.
Otherwise, your brain will keep going. And I have also found that like if I'm working late and if I don't take 30 minutes in front of the TV or in absolute silence, that's the other thing that I find myself like. I like silence. Like I used to listen to you pulled up. I could hear you rocking out, and I do that too. But there was like I find myself now like driving in silence, just because it's like, And if I don't do that properly, like if I go out late with work and have to come back and it's 2 a.m, if I don't just take 20 minutes, I'll be staring at the ceiling all night.
Sure. Yeah.
And
Your brain's so stimulated.
It is.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's hard to kind of shut that off. I try to get plenty of rest. I obviously haven't missed too many meals. Trying to eat better. That makes all the difference, and doing the low carb thing right now, which is good. And it helps. Sleeping when I, trying to keep a regular schedule. I'm very blessed too. I have to say, that I've got incredible staff that works with us. I'm not a one-man show. That was a very conscious effort. And that's a whole nother conversation if you want to have that sometime.
Yeah.
It's a very conscious effort on my part to say, I don't need to be rich. Let's hire some help and let's put some good people to work in my communities and for us. And we've got great staff and we kind of rotate things a little bit. So not any one person gets burned out. Burnout's a big thing in funeral service. Sure. Yeah. If you were to go back 20, 30 years, there was a lot of substance abuse with funeral service. Yeah.
I could see that.
A lot. A lot. Wow. I don't know that that's necessarily the case anymore. I know of some cases of that, but I don't think, whereas 50, 60 years ago, there were a lot of alcoholic funeral directors, and there were, that kind of thing. And so I think that's because they didn't maybe have a way out, whereas, growing up, someone had to sit at the funeral home and answer the phone if somebody called. There was no phone forwarding. There was no cell phones. That's why you lived at the funeral home, because somebody had to answer the phone.
Right.
And if mom and dad were going to go out, somebody had to come over and stay and answer the phone.
Death doesn't take a break.
It doesn't take a break. And that Reaper, man, he just doesn't, he doesn't appreciate.
Real inconvenient sometimes.
He's an inconvenient
timing,
guy.
Yeah.
And, but again, going back to what we just talked about a minute ago, as inconvenient as it might be for me, I think about that family,
Yeah, people need someone to, and to be able to.
Well,
step into
you
that.
used this term earlier, and I picked up on it right away. You said it a couple of times. Instead of saying, this person asked me to do the funeral, you said, I cared for this person.
I noticed that too.
And that's, even just that, the way you view it is just like, that's mind blowing, because I really do believe that that's what you see. And I don't think you're specifically talking necessarily about the person on the gurney.
Right.
It's the person, or is the people. It's the living entity of the family.
I don't know of any other career that I can think of that does both.
Right.
Cares for the living and the dead at the same time.
Yeah.
And tries to help both of those groups of people into the next phase.
Right.
Faith helps a lot. I know that we've all had that journey. We all are having that journey still to this day. I don't know how people who don't believe in anything
do it. Same.
No idea.
I don't either.
No idea. It's hard enough when you do.
It is. It is.
Oh, I'm not Mr. Holy Man, believe me.
Me either.
But man, I don't know how
I agree.
people can cope with that without some kind of hope.
Yeah.
But yeah, I do. I think that that body, that human life, that body, whether it's living or dead, be treated with respect.
Yes.
It's a sacred vessel.
Yeah.
Just like you are, just like you are, just like little old me is, and I hope someday what I can't do for myself, what's one thing you can't do for yourself?
Right.
You can't take care of yourself after you die, and somebody you have to rely on sometimes the kindness of a stranger to do that. And what greater thing to be asked to do, in my opinion.
It really is quite an honor.
It is.
It really is. When I worked in long-term healthcare, I always would volunteer to take care of the people who were dying or like in the end, and also prepare their bodies for when the funeral homes would come and get them. And a lot of people would joke about it or say that I was morbid and stuff, but I always thought it was just such an amazing gift to be able to give these people. And I had, my own kind of rituals that I would do with them. Do you have any? Do you have any like that you specifically do with your? You don't have to say what they are, but do you have things that you do? Some people pray, some people
I find
open windows to let the spirit out.
No, I don't do that kind of stuff necessarily. I do pray, I find that especially in that quiet middle of the night stuff. It seems like, it's when the sun's not shining, man, it's just a different vibe. I don't know how to,
yes,
that middle of the night stuff, the wee hours when there's nobody up but those of us who are working.
Yeah.
And, I do. I visit with people a little bit. I try to conversate with them a little bit, and that's kind of weird, maybe. But like,
no,
I'm going to take care of you for your family, and
I like that actually.
You got a cool family, I really like your kids, it's weird, but I just
hey man, your daughter's really cute. No,
my wife might be listening.
When the job itself is
true.
When the job itself is already so bizarre. It's really in the grand scheme of things, it's not so weird, really. You know what I mean?
The scale of weirdness. That's
no, not at all.
Look where we are. You know what I mean?
That's right.
But doesn't that bring you some comfort, Justin?
I feel like if I had something I would do if I was in your shoes.
To think about whomever performed Ethan's autopsy, like to be thinking that this person is talking to him, conversating. Maybe he's even just saying, "Oh wow, you really are a big boy,"
and not just
whatever.
a thing and another.
Not just a thing. Like that's really comforting to know, Mike. Honestly.
Yeah. So that person, their soul's gone. I believe all that.
Yeah.
But it's still we're created in the image and likeness of God.
Right.
And
wow. Yeah.
man, dead or alive.
Right.
You know,
That's something I've always had, and everybody, you know, the line that everybody's different, everybody grieves different, everybody feels differently. But something I've always struggled with, and even though I've struggled with it, I know that it's a little bit ridiculous. Is everyone's, you know, they're not there anymore. It's just their body; they're not there anymore. But for me, I've always personally had like a hard time with cremation, just because I feel like they really aren't there anymore. You know what I mean? Like I've always like, my mom was cremated. That wasn't my choice. I would have much preferred to have put her in a spot where I could go and know that even though she's the physical form is gone but still there. It's like I haven't rectified that in my head, like why I have those hang-ups, but like it's just been, then that's the answer you always get. You know, it's like, well, they're not there anymore. You shouldn't care about that. But it's always something I've kind of
that should word will get you in trouble every day.
Right, sure. Yeah.
Should and should not
Yeah.
are BS, man.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, you know, no one should ever, I just said should, no one should ever tell you what you should or shouldn't feel.
That's the only
Yeah.
should.
You know, that's
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
it's just a shell. Well, baloney, that's my mom.
Right.
You know, that's
Right.
my
Yeah.
son. That's
Yeah,
my
right. Yeah.
whoever. You know, I carried him in my womb.
Right. Yeah.
You know, she carried me in her womb.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah. I know.
Yeah.
It.
Yeah. So
know
I
it. Yeah. People
that's one
like
of the
to do
that's
that.
an American thing too. It really is kind of, or a Western society thing.
Yeah.
You know, if you were to go to India, for example, where they maybe they are cremating the bodies on the banks
their
of the
funeral
Ganges
pyre-
River
yeah,
or whatever
yeah.
the case might be, they're still, you know, caring for that body. You know, they're not just like roll out the garbage truck or whatever. You know,
Right.
come on.
Yeah.
And so everybody's entitled to their beliefs, and I'm not trying to. I've already climbed down from the soapbox. I forgot to mention when I was climbing back down, but like, yeah, you know, it's your mother.
Sure.
Right.
It's your mother's body. It's
I'm
what, you know,
so I'm the exact opposite of you, and maybe we've talked about this
about it a
before.
little
Yeah,
bit.
like I believe, from ash we came and ash we return, whatever, or dust, whatever. So like there's something for me symbolic about the ashes, just because I don't know. There's kind of like a poetic beauty to that, having those ashes sitting on top of my piano, you know.
And I think maybe
And
I
if
would
you
feel
had-
differently if I had them. But
Yeah, because I know myself, I am not driving to a cemetery, dude, in the middle of winter, like to see my son. So it's like I really do appreciate that, but I also more over like because the symbolism of that whole like ash to ash type thing. So, but yeah, it's really interesting. Do you find like more people are getting cremated now?
Yeah, I think it's climbing. I think the national average, last I heard, is about 50% now in the U.S. I couldn't tell you what it is, what it's been.
Yeah.
It's certainly increased. What we've seen, what we run into a lot,
Yeah.
as I stumble over my words like a bumbling fool here, there's such a variety of options with cremation.
Okay.
You know, if someone comes in and they say, I want to be cremated, or mom wanted to be cremated, okay. Now that opens 50 more decisions you need to make. Do you want to be cremated immediately? You want to be cremated before or after the funeral?
Yes, right.
What do you mean after the funeral? Cremation is cremation. Is it? No.
Yeah.
You knew. You know, you could still bury cremated remains. You
Yeah.
know, you could still, you know.
Do you
there-
want to have a viewing?
right
of the,
first,
yeah.
before, or after. You know, there's all sorts of, not after,
Yeah.
but you know, there's
Right.
there's any
Yeah.
number of things. I think that some people, going back to what I said earlier, and this is not a judgment. I guess it is a judgment, but it's their people's choice. I think there are some people that choose immediate cremation with no viewing because it's quote easier, or it's easier to not confront
Yeah. Wow.
the body.
Yeah.
I know people like that. You know, they're like, if I don't have to see them, I can still just think about them when they were alive. But I think for me, like, I was lucky enough to, and when I say luck, it's pure luck because I had little to no say over my mom's funeral. But we did do a viewing in a casket.
I'm glad you were able to
And then
accomplish that.
it was after the fact that she was cremated. But I think I needed that time. And I think I'm glad it happened. But I don't know how I would feel if I wouldn't have gotten that time.
There's very few things that I know of in this world that are harder than walking up to the casket. That's brutal. And
Walking away was a lot harder.
I
for
bet
me.
it was.
Yeah.
I never thought of that.
Yeah.
But I think there's something in our caveman brain way back here somewhere. I remember specifically walking into, I have my dad's oldest brother, my Uncle Lyle, was probably, super close with us. He took us fishing when I was a kid, one of those kind of things. And really tight with him. Not so much in more recent years because I'd grown up and we'd gone our separate ways, these kind of things as adults do. But walking up to his casket was like brutally hard for me. And then in a moment, I was fine. It was like I needed to do that. I can't describe why. I can't explain it. It's like, okay, he's okay. That's him. He's really gone. Whatever the case might be. I don't know. I can't I'm not going to beat on the drum for viewing, but if everybody had the opportunity, what you did, I think they'd be a little more well adjusted.
I don't think. Yeah.
struggle there. I really struggle there.
Sure.
And just because, I feel like when Ethan died in the hospital and, having to walk away from that hospital room and leave that parking lot that I had been there for 10 days and leave and know that I was never going to see him again, to have to go through that twice, I don't think I could do it. I don't think I could do it.
I think maybe it could be maybe situational
I think
because
I think it is
I think it is.
situational.
for me, I got to my mom's house and the ambulance was leaving, and because of the situation at the hospital and the autopsy they were going to do, I wasn't able to see her. And I think I didn't know. I think going into the visitation, I didn't know for sure what I was going to do. What it turned into was 2 hours of me standing by that casket and people just having to come to me, and if they wanted to see her, they had to see me because I wasn't going anywhere. And then it took probably about an hour and a half for them to pull me away after everybody left. And I think for me, it was just because I felt like it was the last time I was going to get to be with her.
Yeah.
You talk a lot about time. You mentioning how long you were there, how long it took away. We get focused on this hurry up and,
Yeah.
it's sad that we do that.
Isn't it? Especially in moments of grief and tragedy, because really time stops. Sort
Absolutely.
Of.
Or
But
it goes backwards.
Or it goes
sometimes.
backwards. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, totally. But yeah, you're right. Let me ask you this.
Okay.
How, in your years that you've been doing this, have you had someone stay an exceptionally long time after people that just need that,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sure.
where they just need to be there,
Yep.
and there's no rush to,
Right.
yeah,
I think
I
one of the
definitely
things.
didn't feel rushed.
Right.
Good. I'm glad to hear that.
yeah.
I
That's
think
good.
what the guy that took care of her was a very nice guy, and he said, "I'm headed home." He said, "But there's someone here, and you leave when you're ready to leave."
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, I believe that you got to take your time, and because it's not like a conscious choice of yours.
right.
How can we say in 2 hours' time you might be ready to go in 5 minutes. You maybe aren't ready to go, and it might be at the cemetery where someone stays for an hour, or whatever the case might be. Going back for a moment about both of your experiences, you both had, and back to your experience in working around
Yeah.
death.
Yeah.
You've seen some things. What I like about, I'm not banging the drum for what I do, but what I like about a viewing in a non-judgmental, neutral ground type place is that, there are no tubes. There is no ambulance cot there. There are no rubber gloves on the floor.
Yeah,
there are
that
no,
is-
it's a chance to, sometimes all someone needs is a little cleaning up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
After my sister died, because I was at the hospital, she had already passed away on my way there, but she had the tubes and everything still in there because they have to leave them in there
Sure.
when they're doing the autopsy and stuff.
Yep.
And seeing her the next day at the funeral home, it was sweet, I guess. She looked sweet. you know, and like just peaceful. And, you know, sitting here listening to this, it really makes me think about how like I didn't see that sweetness with Ethan, and I hadn't seen it, you know, for days and days before that. So yeah, I don't know. Maybe it would have been a better, I don't know.
Don't do that to yourself.
I know it's weird though, because you don't think, you know, there is something to be said about that, about having that, like the little cleaning up thing.
And a lot of people, like I said, a lot of people don't want that. Lissa, my wife, she likes to say like, sometimes she doesn't want to. They're just on vacation somewhere, even though she knows they're not. It keeps her from getting too sad.
Yeah.
They're somewhere else.
We play those little games with ourselves. You know,
yeah.
convince ourselves. You said something earlier, Justin, that I want to come back to. You said we all experience grief differently, and that's true. But I think we each of the grieves
Yeah,
that we experience.
What is the plural of griefuses?
I love that.
How much griefuses?
Griefuses we experience is unique too.
Yeah.
So the way that, you know, you think, you know, your experience is colored by one particular situation. You may feel differently at a different loss.
Yeah,
a
every
different
little thing that affects it leads you to how
so
you
many
feel
nuances. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So you might think you know how you grieve. You don't know, because the next
Sure.
one might be different,
Right.
or
Yeah.
whatever the case might
Yeah.
be.
a very
And
good
so
point.
it's hard
That's a really
to.
good point.
We all want to overgeneralize. We all want to walk into the music store and look for the metal section or the whatever section and want it all like perfectly categorized for us.
Yeah.
It doesn't really work that way. Life doesn't work that way at all.
No, it doesn't work that way at all. But never is it more present than in moments of big loss. Like
And to
that,
build
yeah.
on that analogy, I think we've all had that moment where we think we know exactly what we like musically, and then we hear something we've never heard, and we had no idea, but we're like, whoa, I like that. I didn't know what it was
That's
before.
what we're working towards.
That happens
with
in almost
Tiffany,
every
with
aspect
the
of
heavy
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah.
But every
Is
aspect
it,
in life, you know, sometimes things sneak up on you, and you're like, I didn't know I needed that.
Yeah.
But I definitely needed that.
Yeah, for sure.
Don't you find that those experiences, let's use the music example, are the ones that are the most satisfying?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like I got into funk a few years ago and I'm like obsessed.
Yeah.
And I can't play bass. You know, but like I didn't know what I was missing
Right.
until I
Yeah.
heard
That's
it.
exactly.
Yeah.
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 And
Okay,
Yeah.
so speaking of the music thing, because we're running up on an hour here, but
Sorry.
no,
It's been a fun time.
No,
I'm
this
enjoying
is.
this
I
a
want
lot.
to keep going because this
Yeah.
is really
Let's
interesting.
make it a two-parter.
yeah, if you ever want to,
yes,
if you want to come back,
yes.
I would do it.
Yeah, I want to. We're gonna do it. You heard it here. So now I wanted to just maybe save the question then, because I wanted to.
No, man.
Okay, you said something earlier about how you wanted to ask, like, has anybody had like weird requests or what you had a story
Yeah,
about?
I feel like I think about, you know, because everybody grieves different.
Right.
The different things that people may want for their services, and I'm sure you've seen the very common, I want this hymn for grandma and I want this prayer for grandma. But then I'm sure you have the ones where they're like off the wall. And like you said, you want to give them what they need. Have you had any just like any experience you can talk about where you had to like not laugh?
Oh my, I mean, when there's laughter, it's the best part. I mean,
Of course.
everybody's laughing, you know.
Yeah.
I remember distinctly hit the road jack one time at the end of a funeral.
Oh, that's
I remember
good.
Jeremiah was a bullfrog at the end of a funeral. I remember Raise a Little Hell at a funeral.
Oh wow.
I remember. Now these are not at the church usually.
Of course.
You know, these might be. You know, the those are always interesting conversations. What do you mean I can't have Slayer at the end of my Catholic mass? You know?
Right.
Ask Father
That's
Joe.
exactly
you know,
what I'm talking
You know
about.
that kind of stuff. You know, I don't have to be the bad guy in those situations, but you know, at the funeral home, you know, so there's kind of two different things going on. We have people that are very traditional and maybe want to have their funeral at whatever church, and they may have requirements or rules, or this is how it's done. There might be, especially among the liturgical churches, whether it's the Catholic or the Lutheran or the other churches that are very liturgical in worship style versus more the free churches. There may be some specific requirements or lack thereof with what they will allow and won't allow. But then there's people that have funerals at the funeral home, and usually it's like, if it's not illegal, you can do it here.
It's a free for all.
Yeah, so we have had
Chocolate fountain? Yes.
we've had some crazy stuff. I tell you, the one that's coming, and it's a little bit of around here, but not like to the extent that I know of. I have a friend who's a funeral director in Milwaukee, and their like number one revenue stream is beer.
Okay.
And I don't know if that's such a good idea.
Okay.
You know, with grieving and alcohol,
Yes.
maybe not always the
Yeah.
best thing.
Yeah.
That's Wisconsin too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
saying what I'm saying. But so those kind of things, we've had people bring their animals in. You know, we've had people fire off guns afterwards. We've had fireworks. We've had that kind of thing. You know, as long as it's not going to get me in trouble, or if it's not illegal, or you
I
know.
suppose you have that out clause where you can be like, it's a church, it's not me. You know what I mean? That's kind of
Well,
nice.
I mean,
I didn't really
at
think
the same
about that.
time, yeah, it is. I mean,
Sure.
you got to ask Pastor Bob about
Right.
that. You know?
Yeah, right.
I think that when thinking about that, it made me think about, I think we're going on 4 years now. My wife's brother, at only 31 years old, he worked on the windmills and wind farms, and unfortunately at the end of the day, had an accident with his harness and fell from the top of one of those and,
Oh, my
and
God,
didn't
I'm
make
sorry.
it. Yeah, I appreciate that. And, you know, when someone dies young like that, tragically, the funerals are always usually big with a lot of people. And unfortunately, a lot of times I'm sure you see this too, where sometimes at a funeral, the pastor or the priest knows the person and they deliver a message that's very heartfelt and very, like at Ethan's funeral, I could definitely tell Bo had a real relationship with Ethan and it came across. He was hurting. Then you have other situations where the pastor, probably more often than not, didn't meet the person. Just
Right.
got to meet the family and hear about them.
Yep.
And that shows, but it's something that happens and something has to deal with. And this was one of those situations. And it was an older guy, and he was kind of a little bit stuffy and, you know, traditional, and that's fine. And he was saying all this flowery stuff, and I'm sure Christopher was a wonderful man, and what I've heard about him, and this and that, and the Lord is with him now, and this passage, and it was all very nice and very formal and comforting. And then he says, and now we would like to play a song chosen by the family, and he sits down on his creaky wooden chair and folds his hands over his Bible. And over the super trebly, lacking bass speakers, they played all 6 minutes and 42 seconds of Crossroads by Bone Thugs and Harmony.
Oh my gosh.
And this entire giant funeral pact of hundreds of his white trash friends are listening to this rap song, and we're about 2 verses into Busy, Lazy, and Crazy Bone, and this pastor is just sitting there, and I wish you radio listeners could see my face, and he's just like, and I'm laughing, and then I'm like upset that it's been going on this long, and then I'm laughing again, and then I'm like, my wife's mad at me because I can't stop laughing, and then I realize like they're gonna do the whole song, they're gonna do the entire song. And then
what you gonna do?
Yep, just wee at the beginning, and just like the beat kicks in, and I was so worried people were gonna get up and start dancing or something, and like you can hear like this rap going and then behind it, and like people crying, and it's not supposed to be a funny moment, but I'm one of them guys, and the song ends, and you can hear, you know, people shuffling in the pews, and it's that quiet church feeling again, and the pastor gets up and goes, "That was nice." And I honestly don't think he meant it. I really don't. I don't think he thought it was that nice.
But it's cool that he allowed it to happen.
Yeah,
I mean,
he
you know, it
did.
wasn't like, you
He
know,
did. Yeah.
wow.
But you know how awkward moments always seem to last longer than they really do?
Yes. Time stops again. It moves
6 minute
backwards
song,
sometimes.
I felt like I lived there in that awkwardness. It was.
That's
That
classic.
is so good.
That's a good one.
Yeah,
That
it's a
is
pretty good
so
story.
good.
That's a good one.
Yeah. Oh man. Whew. I've seen some crazy shit at funerals.
Oh, yeah. And you get to hear some crazy stories, and you know, I have an uncle who's a funeral director too. He said, start writing stuff down. It's like, no, you know, it's too late.
Yeah.
But some of the things you start thinking back on, going, oh my God, I forgot about that.
Yeah, for sure.
Memoirs of a funeral director. That would
Oh,
be
man.
interesting.
Oh, man.
Well,
You
there's all
imagine
sorts
what-
of stuff out there.
Yeah, I'm
I mean,
sure.
But
But I'm
imagine
sure
what the
anyone
water.
could. Another thing that made me, you know, not to bring it back down because we were going to leave on such a laughy note, but another question I feel like I want to ask you is, so we talked a lot about, you know, getting to see, a lot of times those things are called celebrations of life, which
Sure.
when they can be, that's much nicer.
Yeah.
Sure.
And people sharing stories, and you
Sure.
feel like even when you don't know someone, you get to know them.
Sure.
On the opposite end of that coin, I imagine you've done a handful or probably more funerals where it's more of a formality and that person didn't have anyone. And it's, you know, very quiet funerals or no, you know what I mean? Is that in those moments you kind of like, there's no one around to tell you what that person is like.
Yeah.
How does it differ doing
Yeah, it's sad,
caring
though,
for
isn't
someone
it?
like it really is
It's sad.
So I imagine caring for someone like that as opposed to someone that had a lot of people.
I can think of a couple examples like that without getting too specific. One was I was a student, and we were at a funeral. It was a giant church, like physically large church.
Yeah.
And it was the three of us from the funeral home, the pastor, the deceased, an organist, and I think 2 or 3 members of the family, and that was it. And it was just kind of like, wow, man. Sad. It struck me as sad. I don't know.
Yeah.
I imagine it makes
Yeah.
you reflect. I mean, for me it would on like just you hope that when it's your time
Yep.
you have people around that, you know.
Well,
Or hope you outlive everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
That might have been part of
Yeah.
the deal too.
I mean, I think one of the things that like how I explain like a moral compass, and you know, this is something I heard Bo say many, many years ago was, you know, if you're not sure what your purpose is, you need to visualize yourself at your own funeral and what are people saying about you. And so, what do you want somebody to say about who you are at your funeral? And I think that's, but so, you know, you see this like shallow attendance at a funeral and you think to yourself, what did this fucking guy do? Like, this could be really bad. But especially if it's like when I worked in long-term healthcare, there, especially women that were living well into their hundreds,
Yep.
and all of their children had died, their spouses, their sisters, siblings, everybody, and they're just left. I just can't even imagine what that would be.
My
like.
great grandma died at 99 years old, and she had 8 children and buried 5 of them.
Ooh.
And
Oh,
it got to a point where she died when I was, I want to say 23 or 24. And she was the, you know, the matriarch of the family that had all the big Christmases and stuff. And when she was gone, you know, you hear that a lot when
Goes by the wayside.
everything
sometimes.
you don't see. And then it gets to the point where the only time you see a lot of family members is the next time someone passes away.
Yep.
And I remember this really like kind of like jarring moment where I'd been to 2 of my uncles and one of my aunt's funerals, and my grandma was at all of them. And my 4th uncle that passed away was the last one that I saw her at before she passed away. And she was in a wheelchair at this point, and her hearing had pretty much gone. And I remember them wheeling her up to her son's casket, the 4th child that she'd buried. And I remember her just looking and taking a long sigh and going, okay, I'm ready. And just they wheeled her away. And it's just like, she'd had to do that so many times that,
Oh my God,
you know,
my whole
it was
heart just dropped.
Yeah,
out of my
and it was like,
chest.
I remember watching that from a distance. She didn't know I was watching, you know, but it was just like,
That memory is burned into you.
yeah, absolutely.
It's just-
And like, I
yeah.
couldn't imagine what that would be like.
No. Lord, take me home.
Strange.
Yeah, get me out of here.
But again, it goes back to show that these are all things that are part of your daily job, which makes it such an
Okay,
interesting.
and I just gotta say, there's so much we didn't cover that
Oh,
I
yeah.
want to talk about.
Let's do another
So,
one.
Scratching the
okay,
surface,
so
yeah.
we're gonna do a part 2 with Mike. We just committed to that right now, because damn, I learned a lot of things.
yeah.
It's
I'm just so entertaining. That's why.
for
it
real.
is, you
I mean,
know,
Mike is
come on.
really entertaining, and I mean, he's sitting over here pretending like he doesn't have these charming good looks too.
I know.
Right? I mean,
Yeah,
like,
he's
trying to pretend.
Tiff's trying to keep it together like she's not around 2 of the handsomest guys she's ever seen her entire life.
You when you got it, guys. Okay.
It's my burden to carry. and
I'm just
Justin's
happy to
burden
be here,
carry.
man. I'm just happy to be
So I
here.
don't keep a lot of mirrors in my house. I'd be just standing in them all day. If I,
Oh God, this was good though. This is a good hour.
I think people are really going to enjoy this one.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to speed the recording up and cut out all my ums and
No,
uhs. to get
no.
it.
You can always tell, like when we look back on episode times,
Yeah.
the ones that go a little over an hour, we always know we were having a good time and
yeah.
like getting, you know, really into something. The ones that we look back on and they're not quite an hour, we're like, oh, maybe I don't know. Those are usually the ones where me and Tiff are just
Did I
alone and
eat
don't
that
really want to hang out
day?
anymore.
Yeah. We're irritated with each other. So yeah, let's hit up episode 2
Also,
on this.
since we do plan on doing that,
Yeah.
if you, as listeners, have any questions
Yes.
that you'd like us to ask Mike next time, ask them.
Yeah.
Facebook, reach out to us. YouTube comments on this video, whatever your preferred form of checking us out is, and we'd love to relay those to you. And
is it tacky to plug the funeral home?
It's not necessary.
Can we put it on? Can we put your information
if
on?
you want to? If somebody has a question, they can always call.
Yeah, yeah. That's kind of. I mean, not like, hey, Mike's looking for business, but like, if if somebody's looking for something in your, because Mike has several different locations that he's at. So I mean, I'm hoping that somebody's going to listen to this and think to themselves like, I've been through the funeral thing before, and I had left a bad taste in my mouth. Like, I really like what this guy has to say. Like, I really like him in the event of this untimely loss.
Well,
to
not
care
so
for
much
my
that,
person.
but like if someone has a question about something, or they,
Yeah.
if they have an experience that they want a further explanation on, or something,
That's so
I'm
great.
glad to
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
I feel like a lot of what we could talk 2 hours about the whole pre-planning thing.
That's
but
that's something I want to talk
but
about.
like getting information before you need it, and whatever it is.
Yes.
In death, it's
Yes.
especially important.
Yes.
Like, get the answers you want ahead of time. Don't wait till you need them.
Yeah. Yeah, I want to get into depth with pre-planning and stuff like that too.
I think in closing, I'd just like to say that, like, it was interesting to see. You're looking at me like, oh, what's this guy going to say? It's interesting to
Pressure's on, buddy.
most of the people that you care for, like I said, are in a moment of despair or vulnerability, and I'd even go as far as to say unconscionable, like, selfishness. Because in those moments, you don't always have the capacity to worry about what anyone else is thinking or what anyone else is, because you're so in that loss in those moments. So I assume most of the people that you deal with on a daily basis, their last thought is, how's this guy doing? What's he going through? You know what I mean? So it's not, as people that aren't funeral directors, I imagine we don't find ourselves often thinking, what's it like day-to-day life for a funeral director? So I think not only was it a fun conversation, but I think we maybe, like, a lot of people will be like, we're all people. We all have different jobs. And it's an interesting look into, I appreciate you being so candid about, just not only your job, but who you are as a person and how they mesh. And I think that was a very eye-opening conversation that I think people will really be like, huh. And I think that's what we're after at the show. So
Cool.
thank you, I guess, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah,
for
you're
real,
welcome.
Mike.
Thank you. It's been great.
Loved it. Loved it. Gold star for the day. Feeling good about it.
Everybody's smiling.
Yeah.
We must have done all right.
Yeah.
For a sad podcast, when everyone leaves smiling.
That's right. It's good. It's good. So let's continue this next episode. We'll see what's up. Yeah, I have just a plethora.
Write them
of
down.
questions. Oh yeah, right, lots of questions. But yeah, hit us up on Facebook if you have questions that you want us to ask Mike, the Undertaker of North Iowa. So, listen, guys, as always, appreciate you so much. Thanks for tuning in, and until we meet again,
Hang in there, guys.